Hello and welcome to another edition of the Skycast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. It's a sort of Sky Sports fantasy football version of the FPL Focus Scoutcast. Today we're looking ahead to game week 26 in the Sky game and crucially the upcoming overhaul. My name is Joe and joining me is Luke. Luke, how are you?
Very good, very good. Putting my Excel spreadsheets together for the Oval. How about you, Joe?
No, I'm not. I wish I was. I have to spend my time putting these lovely images together for these. But
Lucky you.
I sort of have in the back of my mind, I tend to use pen and paper for this. And if
Old
I
school.
was more proficient in Excel, I would definitely use that because you need it really. Because my scraps of paper are just not cutting it. But let's see how we can get on. Before we look at the next set of fixtures in Game Week 26, let's get stuck into our overhaul planning, see how it's going so far. So I just wanted to establish when it's taking place. It's taking place February the 2nd to the 8th, is that right?
Yeah.
It's between Game Weeks 26, which is this weekend, and 27, the following weekend. So it's quite a tight window to decide. So just first of all, what are your early thoughts about it and your sort of fixtures that are coming up that spring to mind, or possible formation, just those kinds of things, general thoughts about it.
Yeah. Well, there are actually games on the 2nd of February, so it's after the games that it will be active after the game week's finished. So I don't think you can do it beforehand,
Okay.
just in case.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think depending on how many transfers you have left is going to dictate quite a lot how you set up your overhaul team. I've got a lot less than I wanted, so for me, I might have to ignore some captain days. So I'll sort of have to factor that into my decisions. But I think the general consensus amongst most of the top players I've been speaking to is just continue to load up on Liverpool. I mean, their games are just
Yeah.
fantastic. The defenders, as we know, are keeping clean sheets, but they're also crucially getting that bonus, which last season just showed us they blew the game apart. Them and Man City's defense, they destroyed it really, and they've reverted to that type. So I don't think I'm going to buck that trend. It's probably going to be heavily, Liverpool defense in my overhaul. And there's a few teams like Leicester are quite a key team. I think they play quite a few times on a single match day,
Yeah.
so it's probably a good idea to have a Leicester player. And usually when you're going to be captaining, one of those players on lots of the days, it's usually good to have the best option because therefore you've got the best captain pick on multiple days. And a lot of people would probably say that's Vardy, so he is still a strong consideration of mine. However, if he doesn't really fit into your team structure, we've still got Mr. Soyuncu, who's just so cheap. And although he might not be the best captain, he has proven that he can get hauls. So really, the main choices I've got is who do I want from Leicester? How many Liverpool defenders do I want? And that's really about it. The only other thing is just worrying about the fact that Man City and Liverpool may start to rotate their teams
Yes.
towards the end. And if you've got very few transfers and you completely stack up on, Liverpool in particular, that may cause you issues later down the line. But I mean, is that something you thought about, Joe?
Well, I've liked this season in some ways, but my rank's inside the top 3,000, so I'd prefer to be much higher, obviously. But one thing I have liked this season is that I've gone for this sort of flexible 4-3-3, 3-4-3 formation. So some of those issues you were talking about there, about possible rotation coming up, that sort of issue hasn't bothered me so far. And that's my immediate thought about the overhaul, is that I like that formation this season. I like the fact that I can move to four defenders, and the midfielders haven't been so great this season, partly because most of the good ones are being reclassified as strikers. So I like having three up top there. I like having expensive players there, so you can move them out. So say I want Aguero, well, if I've got, I don't know, say for example Salah, Mane, I can. If I want Aubameyang, I can move them in. I can move them in quickly without having to do that kind of two transfer moves. I can.
Yeah, very key.
So that's what I'm looking at with the overhaul. Sticking to that really. Part of the reason I've done it so far is having Gilbert in there as a sort of a dud, and I'm looking to hopefully move away from that 4.5 defender. The other thing is I'm just looking at the fixtures in general. Game week 27 is that split game week So there's lots of captainable days there. So some take place one weekend, then they're taking place the next weekend. And as you were saying, there's some of those teams there I'm not really bothered by. Like Everton v Palace, for example, Brighton v Watford. It's nothing really appeals there. Maybe Richarlison.
Indeed. Which is strange, right? Because we could be making an Oval team with no captain on essentially the first day of the Oval. Doesn't feel right. But like you, I think it's going to come down to how many transfers you've got there. If you're absolutely flush, you might start with one. And this is where, you've earned that sort of reward or the chance to go for, rolling the dice, because it's a dice roll. Every individual captain day is pretty much a dice roll. You could have Richarlison or Foster, whoever you're having from those games, and they could quite easily blank, and then you probably don't want them long term. No. So essentially, you're throwing a transfer away on a dice roll. So, I mean, I probably won't have any of the players from any of those teams like you, and I'm just going to ignore them.
The only thing I was thinking possibility is Foster in goal. He's doing well in points at the moment, even against the poor teams. That's the next day, Sheffield v Bournemouth, and luckily Man City against West Ham. So lovely, Man City. Hopefully we can get some coverage for captaincy then. But I'm looking at maybe if I was going to go back to that 4.5 defender sort of route, if Dan Burn is back for Brighton, at least I've got someone there. And he is cheap and he does play and he has got the odd goal or assist in him. But we don't know whether he's going to be fit in time. He would unlock a lot of my overhaul team. But let's have a look at some of the... I've done a little list here actually of captainable teams. So look, I'm going to put up a patchwork quilt of fixtures on the screen here. It's a season ticket for the next 8 game weeks. The game week titles there are from FPL, but we can see these are the next set of fixtures coming up. And we can see there the teams that are riding high there in the fixtures, lots of nice blue or green, whichever way you want to look at it. You've got the likes of Newcastle in there. You've got the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, as you said, completely key. Then you've got Southampton, you've got Leicester, Sheffield United and Wolves have all got quite good fixtures. Then I was thinking marrying that up really with what we know about Sky, because we've got captainable days. We don't know the fixtures yet from April, but we do know during February, and it goes up to February, and we know Marches as well. So I can link those in with have they got good fixtures? Have they got a captainable player that day? And that's the way I'm looking at that. So I've got a little list of players. Well, both of us will have ideas about players, but I've got a list of teams here, and I was looking at captaincy, and this may or may not help people. But I was looking at a list of captainable teams from now until the end of March. At top of the pile, as you said, Liverpool. I could captain them at least 5 times, happily. Maybe more. Man City, I could captain them at least 4 times. Leicester, maybe 3 times, so they're key as well. Spurs, maybe 3 times, so I've got to keep an eye on Spurs players. Arsenal, maybe a couple of times. Villa, captainable on one occasion. Grealish could be the one there. Wolves maybe once. So I'm looking at Wolves and thinking, someone like Traore or Jimenez. And then Everton, I could captain them once maybe. that fixture we're talking about. And then there's the Chelsea Man U one as well. So I was putting that in terms of thinking about teams. But let's look at players. Let's start from the back, the boring bit. Goalkeeper. Who's in your thoughts of your overhaul goalkeeper?
Well, I think the two that are going to be the most popular by a long way are going to be Alisson and Henderson. Alisson just simply because you get those extra 2 points for the clean sheet. So goalkeepers get essentially 9 points for keeping a clean sheet. And you'd expect from now to the end of the season, Liverpool probably keep the most. So he's good value still. But then obviously costs close to 2 million more than Henderson, who... the other consideration I should have probably mentioned at the start is how many Sheffield United defenders do I want, because they've just got such that great run and they're just such good value really. They don't necessarily get bonus, but just because they're so cheap and the clean sheets, they present the value as well. So Henderson's probably going to be my guy, I think, just because I need that extra cash. If I had it laying around, it would be Alisson, like no questions.
Yeah.
Or maybe even Ederson, just to give you that Man City one and hope he takes a penalty. But I think that's a bit of a punt.
It's rumoured that he's the backup if Aguero and Gundogan aren't on the pitch. It could be him. Well, let's see. Yeah, Snap. I've got on my list here. I've only got one name, Henderson. It's because of that value. Obviously, if I thought I had.
I mean, Foster is a consideration. You said he's been really good. He's just
he is.
not.
I just look at those fixtures. You're right. Henderson is 139 points, top scoring keeper, 6.4. We found our man. To put it that way. What about defenders though? Now you were talking about Liverpool, definitely in your thoughts. Are you thinking of going 5 at the back, 4 at the back, and which defenders are in your thoughts?
I mean, it's. I mean, Van Dijk is an absolute lock. I'm not budging on that at all. I don't think. Yeah, you will need him pretty much, just because out of everyone you'd expect him to play virtually every game, and he's obviously getting bonus nearly every time he plays. 10 points a week, pretty much just standard. We've been banging on about that for weeks now. So he's an absolute lock. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold, just because he's a little bit cheaper than Robertson and obviously has such great assist potential, I think he's pretty much a lock for me as well. And then it's really, do I want to go for that extra one in Robertson or Gomez, who's obviously a little bit cheaper? He's 9.2 million. It's such a good price. My concerns with Gomez are sort of what we mentioned before, that later on in the season, maybe he'll start bringing in, the likes of Matip or Lovren, or giving even Trent a rest and putting him at right back. I don't know. It's hard to know what's going to happen there. I mean, Gomez himself is quite an injury-prone player, so even if he's not rested or rotated, my concern is he might pick up an injury at some point. And when you're low on transfers, who do you switch to around that price? I don't think there's that many good defenders around sort of his price, 9.2, just a little bit below the top level, so you can't really switch to anyone else. So that's a real thought. I don't know. I think a lot will be going with Gomez. But for me, I've got so few transfers, I probably won't be going there with him.
No, I mean, there's two things that spring to mind there. I just think, as you said, Van Dijk and Alexander-Arnold, for me, they're lock-ins there. But with Gomez, I think there is the potential threat of rotation, because they could have the league wrapped up really, really early. And it just keeps going through my mind what Mark Lawrenson was saying on the radio a couple of weeks ago, where he was being interviewed about one of his title-winning seasons with Liverpool, where they won it really easily with weeks and weeks to go, and he basically they didn't win a game. I don't think they won a game after that, because they didn't need to. Well, they certainly didn't perform very well, and he kept talking about that. It was just, it is inevitable, and I know that with my own side, Brighton. Once we secured promotion, not quite the same as Liverpool, once we secured promotion to the Premier League, they pretty much down tools. They had enough. And I just could think, I'm not sure Liverpool are going to be as good assets during May or April even, but I think they're absolute key for March. So I'm heavy there. So I'm looking at sort of 4 or 3 at the back, probably 4. Van Dijk, definitely. Alexander-Arnold. Van Dijk, 166 points, got to be there. Pereira at Leicester. So if I've identified having Leicester is key. I think Pereira's captainable. And
definitely,
if I'm not going to go for Maddison or Vardy, I want Pereira in my side. Sionju is good value, but he's not getting that bonus that he was, those tiers that he was getting earlier. I'll put down Bolly at Wolves, because Wolves have good fixtures. Bolly's got a goal in him. He's not going to be well owned. It's an interesting differential, I think, for people to consider if they want to move up the ranks there. And I've also mentioned Dan Burn, maybe. That would present a nice captain. And obviously he's just so cheap. So when he's fit, he plays. I do, as a Brighton fan as well, I don't envisage many clean sheets. But, he's done a job this season so far. Gilbert, kind of, but as I said, I kind of instinctively would want to move away from that 4.5. So it's just
it's kind of you don't expect too much from those players. It's just what they enable elsewhere. But I'll be moving away from them as well. I think the other name to throw out there is Baldock. I think he's 6.3 million. Obviously covers Sheffield United quite well. Has got the odd attacking output. So I think he'll be in quite a few teams. Aside from that, I mean, you did mention Spurs. Aurier still consistently picked up, tackle and assist points. If he can add clean sheets to that as well, he could be absolute gold. But that seems beyond him, sadly.
Well, it comes back to that, like I talk about in FPL, price points. So if I go for someone who's sort of around Aurier's price, not necessarily him, I can move to him when I want to get a Tottenham player to captain. I feel I can do that quickly. But because I'm not sure I want any other Spurs players, maybe Son, but
yeah, that's it. I mean, if you've got someone like Pereira who covers quite a lot of Leicester days, then you can look at it and look at Spurs and see, well, where can I switch Pereira and Aurier around for captains? And that's an idea potentially.
Yeah.
The other name that's obviously a massive name last season has just come back is Laporte. Incredibly expensive, but he's basically Van Dijk Mark II if he reverts to how he was previously, and obviously a bit of a differential now. So he's a name I'm strongly considering. He's basically the same price as Robertson, and he gives you that different option. I mean, if you've got if you're putting a Man City player in, which is probably going to be Kevin De Bruyne, and then you don't trust any other Man City player because they rotate, having Laporte in there might be a good idea instead of a Robertson, because then if De Bruyne is rested randomly for a Champions League game or something, you've suddenly got a Man City player ready to captain that no one else has potentially got or needs to make a move for.
And if you get wind of the team sheet, or you can see it beforehand, if it's one of the early kickoffs, for example, and KDB's on the bench but Laporte's playing, if you've got both of them, you don't have to panic. You can just switch captain. Done.
Yeah.
Because he said it's like Van Dijk, isn't it? He just steps on the pitch. There you go. There's your 5 points, mate. And anything else is just a complete bonus, like clean sheets, or maybe a goal, which we know he has in him. What about midfield? I suspect there's going to be a couple of names that are very familiar on the list. So who are you thinking about for midfielders?
Well, as you alluded to, I think the formation, it's a good idea to limit the amount of midfielders you've got. They've just been completely useless pretty much this season. So that basically means 5-3-2 or 4-3-3, because both have three in midfield. Those would be my two go-tos. 4-3-3 is far more flexible, but 5-3-2 potentially, I think you can get more points out of it because the defenders are just so good. However, like you say, it limits you a little bit. You can only do a defender for a forward, really. It's basically your only move. Sometimes you want an expensive forward, you might have to make two swaps. But anyway, midfield, I think De Bruyne's pretty much going to be a lock for everyone. I think it's just too risky to go without. So I think he's definitely in there, and I imagine you've got him as well, Joe.
Yeah.
And then the other two, I think, are also going to be pretty common. Grealish and Traore just stand out to me. They're incredibly priced.
That's my notes.
Is that it? Yeah, done. Yeah. They're just such good price. 7.9 million for Grealish and 6.9 for Traore. Yeah. Actually, one of our viewers suggested, I don't know if you can remember, Joe, Traore, months and months ago, and I dismissed him, basically saying, he gets 2 points every week. I think he got a massive haul against Man City for the first time. Honestly, he's not going to do that every single week. Generally, he doesn't get bonus, doesn't do much. And that's been right on occasion, but he's just got so many of those hauls, and he's just such a man of the match candidate.
Yeah.
That I apologise to that person, and I hope he did get him in because he's been fantastic. So you've already mentioned Wolves potentially cover a captain day there, and Grealish later on as well. And I don't know any other options I'd even look at the moment in midfield. I struggle to pick them out, to be honest with you. I mean, Jordan Henderson is still a name that we could look at. But aside from that, is there anyone else for you?
There is. We talked about that. If I wanted to get an Everton captain, Richarlison, but I've got 16 transfers left. But I'm basically booking up one of them for Richarlison because I don't want him. Because we can see from the fixtures with Everton, they're really low down. They got an absolute awful run. So I really only want him for one game, and so I'm not that keen there. So that's my list: KDB, Grealish, Traore, 121 points from 6.9 million. Brilliant.
Yeah, incredible. And the only other person I'll throw out, actually, I forgot, is Cantwell. He's still so cheap at 5.8 million. So it depends how you're structuring your team. If you're saying that if we're saying that midfield's rubbish, then why spend any money on it? You could cut out almost 2 million by going from Grealish down to Cantwell if you wanted to pick him and then invest that elsewhere. So I think that's still quite valid.
And that leads us, we're going to need that money for up top because this season's different, and I don't think post-overhaul it's going to change as it's been pre-overhaul. There's all the best players are strikers, all the best captains are apart from Van Dijk, I think are strikers, whether they're playing midfield or not, in reality. But in the Sky game, they're all listed as forwards, and that's what I want. I want 3 of them. Which ones though? I don't know. So yeah, who are you forwards you considering, and are you looking at 2, maybe 3?
Yeah, I've currently got 2, and I've gone for 5-3-2. I think what is important, or at least for me, especially on quite a few transfers, is to make sure you've got Mo Salah in your team. Just because, well, we've said already the Liverpool games are great. He hasn't particularly been that great, but it's more to do with the fact that he's the most expensive forward in the game at 12.2 million. So he just gives you that flexibility. You can take him out for whoever you want up front if need be. And I think that's quite valuable.
Yeah.
So, you suddenly look at a run of games, or you see a team sheet and you think, I really want that player. How can I get him? And it's just easy. Salah out straight to that person.
Yeah.
So the fact that Mane's injured at the moment, it may have given you that temptation to save that money elsewhere. But then you've got a gap between Mane and Salah of about 0.7, I think it is. So it would cause its own issues. So I think Salah's pretty much a lock for now, despite him not. There is an argument, if you're going to captain Van Dijk every game, then do you need Salah? And if you need that variety for all these different captains, I can completely see the argument of not going for him. For me, it's just about that flexibility with having few transfers. And then the second one, there's a lot of candidates here. I mean, Danny Ings even throws his name into the hat. We know about him in FPL being a great asset. We know he's got really good games. He's 9 million, so a little bit cheaper than the premiums, but still a little bit more expensive than the likes of Tammy Abraham and Pookie, are also just so cheap and such good value if they're going to play every single week. And then you got the likes of Aguero, Jimenez. The names are endless. Vardy even still a consideration. Jimenez, or I think I already said him. It's just there's so many options here, and it depends how much money you've got left over as to who you want to go for. I think. I mean, at the moment, I think in my team, I'm tempted to go with the 2 big hitters in Aguero and Salah, and then just have whoever I want pretty much up front. Are they the 2 most expensive in the game? I think they might be.
I think so. I mean that's pretty much my list. I'm tentatively going to have 3. I'm tentatively going for 4-3-3. Salah, definite, can move to anyone. Aguero or Sterling, probably Aguero, because he can move to anyone. And then the third one, you just mentioned loads of Aubameyang's another one. I quite like the look of. Arsenal's fixtures run is actually not too bad. I know they've got what have they got? City is within their fixture run, but that's what they got. The Newcastle, Everton at home, then they got the City game, and then they got West Ham at home, Brighton away, Southampton away, Norwich at home. They just got a great run. I kind of want Aubameyang for that. At least I want the option. I want to give myself the option of it. So I'm looking at something like Salah, Aguero, Aubameyang, boom, and then
that's a lot of money, isn't it?
I know it's a lot. That's a lot of money, but I've saved it because I've got like Traore and Grealish, and I'm going for probably a 4-3-3, and because I can do that, because you mentioned some of the names, so they're much cheaper. So you've got the likes of Ings, Jimenez should come into consideration as well, and then Vardy. I've got these options there, so when the fixtures go, when I fine tune the sort of moves I want to make, I can think, well, I can just do that in one move, because I want about if there's any 3 for 1 or whatever, 2 for 1 kind of options, I just want to better do it in one move rather than scrabble around.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. I think if you're absolutely stacked on transfers, you can play the fixtures a little bit. I mean, you could have someone like Calvert-Lewin for 8.8 million. He looks like really good for a couple of games. Chris Wood even is 8.5 million. There's loads of names here that they're just so cheap, those strikers, for what they offer. As long as you're picking a striker who takes shots at goal, so who's likely to get you that bonus even if they don't score, then I think they're generally a good pick. I mean, Pookie at 7.8 million, that is just so dead cheap. And if you're going for 4-3-3, he can almost be that little enabler on the end. And I still think come season end, he's going to be right up there.
Just more and more names, isn't it? I mean, that's why I just want those. I just want the options to get them all. So first of all, overhaul, as you said, it's like giving yourself that flexibility and option. Looking at those that have been getting lots of bonus points recently, obviously we know about Henderson, Super Henderson, the Arta of the North, and he's been doing really well. He's got his scoring boots on. Fernandinho's still there, an option, expensive, but he's one of those turns up, gets on the pitch, here's some points. Fred is there for some reason. I'm just going to ignore that, and it may come back and bite me when Fred becomes like the Van Dijk of the midfield. But I'm just not going to go near that.
No.
Pope is an interesting for Burnley keeper. If you want like a Henderson, a set and forget, cheap goalkeeper, Pope's there. Pereira's there getting bonus, and your man Laporte you mentioned there sneaking in. So it just gives a little snapshot really of the kinds of players that are getting those bonus. The turn up, here's some points, guys. But yeah, any of those particularly appeal or particularly interesting?
Well, I mean, if your eyes drawn down to Laporte there, if you look at his bonus, he's played 4 matches. Now, this is the last 4 matches, so not the last 4 game weeks. So one of those matches, Laporte actually went off injured in. So let's just say, so there's actually only 3 games there, and of the 3, he got tier 2 passing bonus 3 times. One of them he went off injured in. So essentially, he's getting tier 2 pass bonus every game he plays. So we've already mentioned, I still think he's great. And Pereira's just been a season-long fantastic pick. He's like a Robertson light almost for me. That's how I imagine him in my mind. He's 2 million less nearly, but yet he's probably better on bonus, but just slightly worse on clean sheets. So I think he's if you're sitting there and you've got Robertson in your lineup, I'd strongly look at Pereira instead. I think, just for that variety as well.
I mean, I've missed out on Pereira all season, and so this overhaul could be a chance for me to get him. And I sort of prefer him in a way as a captain option at the moment, because Vardy's I don't know, we haven't really seen much of Vardy in 2020. I don't know what sort of Vardy's going to be. Is age catching up with him? These injuries are not usual for him.
And there's just a lot of strikers that we can pick from, isn't there? Pereira, I mean, again, look at that list. He's 17 tackles. He's so far ahead above everyone else in that regard. And just from the eye test, the last game, he was fantastic in the last game. Really pushed up far.
And in Sky, what follows the eye test? Man of the match points. Which is why Traore does well, because it's basically a rugby league player who's on the pitch, steaming down the wing, and it looks impressive. He just looks impressive as a player. I've had some questions from the community, take in some of the things that we've been speaking about, but also looking ahead a bit to game 26 and 27. But Benny Blanco asks, what is the best strategy for tackling the weird and awkward looking winter break fixture list? So this is the split shift, if you were, of Premier League fixtures. But it's lots of captain days, and we've spoken about some of the problems there. Do we really want an Everton captain? Do we really want a Watford captain? That kind of thing. That's what he's alluding to, really. Is it okay to go without a captain, perhaps, for them?
I think so, yeah. I'm just going to apply the test I usually use for these things is, do I want that player after that game for a set of fixtures, maybe? Like, rather than just look at that individual one day, are there like a set of 3 or 4 games either side where I'd be happy to own that player and I feel like I could get a good return over the group of them? If the answer's no, then I'm just going to ignore it and just chance it. If you're sat there with 25, 30 transfers, then by all means you can roll the dice on that. You may get lucky, just burn it and give it a go. But otherwise, I'll be ignoring the vast majority of these individual days, I think, if I don't want the player for a longer term. It's a hard thing to do. I mean, right off the bat, as I said, the first week, we got the very first day, Everton, Palace, Brighton, Watford, probably going to be ignoring that. Then, the Wolves, Leicester, I'll probably have Traore for that game, so I can sort of cover for that one. And then we go into Villa, Spurs on Sunday, Arsenal, Newcastle. I may not even have a player from that either. And then there's Chelsea versus Man United on Monday the 17th. I may ignore that one as well. Yeah. And that could go vastly wrong. A captain could hit on all 3 of those days in week 1 where I haven't got a player and suddenly you're struggling. Yeah. But it's just, what do? You have one of those players in and then have to take them out later because you don't want them. I'd rather just, I think, risk it personally. Yeah, I mean,
that's the beauty of any fancy football format, is that you're making these little bets in your head. Will that happen? If Richarlison scores a brace, then those that got him and captained him and are going to use a transfer to get rid of him. Well, they're really substantially up on that deal, and those without are already starting post overhaul down on the deal. Heskebo, who's doing very well, he could win it, I believe. I think, I think he's in the top 100 or something.
Yeah.
What is the best thing to do for Mane owners? If he's ruled out for the next 2 games, it's looking very likely he is, by the way. Just take it on the chin or use a transfer to deal with him. Transfers are precious pre-overhaul. What are you going to do with Mane? And what would you advise people, Mane owners, to do?
Yeah, I have Mane as well. I think it's just take it on the chin.
Yeah.
I honestly think that's the answer now, because it's just 2 weeks. Assuming you're moving to another Liverpool player, you get 2 games. If it's not a Liverpool player, you only get 1. So for me, that's a definite no. If you're moving to another Liverpool player, I can see why people might consider it, but I kind of take Van Dijk as the benchmark. Like, so he's the best pick in the game pretty much at the moment. So let's say he gets 10 points in both those games. That's 20 points for 1 transfer. For me, that's just on the cusp, and that's if it goes perfectly. Like, if it goes perfectly and it's 20 points for 1 move, fair enough. But I think most people will already have Van Dijk, and you've got to be open to the consideration that he won't get those 20 points. I mean, he only got 2 last week. The first time I captained him, he didn't even get bonus points, which just sod's law, I guess. So I'd say no. I can understand the temptation. You look at that lineup, it's West Ham. If you don't have Salah, there'll be quite a few that will be tempted to make that move, maybe. But I'd say just stick the captain armband on Van Dijk and sit back.
It would be. It has to be a Liverpool player because they've got 2 games. I mean, or West Ham player if you're odd. But
very brave. Yeah.
But most of the key Liverpool players are probably in your team already. Everyone's got at least one of Van Dijk or Salah, as you said.
Yeah. I just think later on in the season, Heskebo, if he's in a place to win it, that transfer could be so key late in the season when there's games restructured. Liverpool, like we said, might rotate or whatever happens. There'll be a game thrown out there somewhere as a result of these fixture changes where it'll suddenly look very, very tasty for someone, and you really want that swap, I think.
I've got 16 transfers. It's more than some, less than some. But if I had more than 20 transfers left for some reason, I would definitely consider that to a Liverpool player. And in my case, it would be someone like Robertson. I know Firmino's not hugely well owned. He could be a good option as well. If you're looking at 2 games, but I'm slightly put off a defender because they're playing Southampton. Danny Ings, we know, can score against anyone, particularly his old club. And I'm not sure we're going to get a clean sheet. And unless you're Van Dijk, you're not necessarily going to get those 5 points for turning up. So yeah. Save your transfer, Heskebo. Just save it so you can win it. Joe Finley Barder, what formation do you think is the best option for the Oval? So I think we've already covered that really. Flexible. For me, 4-3-3. For you, sort of 5-3-2-ish.
Yeah, 5-3-2 is not really that flexible, but it's just anyone that limits your midfielders, I think, is basically the answer to that.
Ollie Paul asks, how will you tackle game weeks 27 and 28? That's the split shift Premier League fixtures. And will you use transfers to cover a certain game day or try and limit your transfers in the early post-overhaul weeks? So what you're talking about there is something we've already discussed really, is about those issues we're thinking about with Richarlison. It's a gamble, and I think it's going to just depend on how many transfers you've got left, really, because a lot of these players you're probably going to not want long term. But he does interesting. Would you side with a Wolves player over a Leicester one for? I think we talked about the February 14th fixture. I would say I would have one of each myself.
I'll probably have one of each, but by all means, Traore, fantastic pick. It's just so I think a lot of people will captain him on that day because obviously Wolves are at home. But Leicester players we've already mentioned are possibly needed quite a few times. On Friday the 28th of February, they're away to Norwich. So Norwich are very leaky. You'd probably want a Leicester player for that game. So I would say get both if you can handle it. If you can sort it out somehow. It needs to be done, I think.
He was talking about Williams as well for Chelsea United cover for those tricky type of fixtures. Personally, I'm just not interested in anyone from Chelsea and Manchester United at all. That may change with my flexible fixture, my flexible structure for the fixtures and form maybe. But at the moment, what about you? Chelsea, Manchester United, just a no-go at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a no-go. Tammy Abraham's a little injured at the moment, isn't he? But he's still at a great price. So if Chelsea don't sign a striker or nothing happens in the window and Tammy continues to be up front, he's still like 8.3, I think it is, and
Yeah.
he still takes shots, so he's still an option. The games aren't great though. And then for Man United, since Rashford's out of the picture, which in a way I'm quite happy with fantasy wise because he would still be a strong consideration. He's been so good, just one less headache. Then yeah, I can see the argument for Williams because he's so cheap. It's a temptation, but we just don't know he's going to continue to play every game. And that's not the kind of headache you want a player at that price.
Yeah, it's not FPL. There's no bench. There's limited transfers. I don't want to mess around with likes of him. Lee Williams asked a similar question, really, just about Chelsea and Manchester United. So I think we've answered that. Hornet, just before we come on to game 26, Hornet asks, is 3 Liverpool defensive strategy a good set and forget for the Oval? So something you've spoken about, really, talking about Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, and one other looks like a good, sensible strategy.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I think it's just as long as you've got the variety elsewhere in your team or the transfers to be able to cope with bringing in different players for individual days. If you've got 6 or 7 Liverpool in your team, then you are limiting yourself in some way. However, you could argue that the points earned in the period up to when you actually need to swap them out will be worth it because they'll just continue to dominate. So, I'll personally be going with 2, Van Dijk and Alexander-Arnold, probably, and then maybe Laporte as my third, who could be Robertson just to begin with even, and then switch to Laporte if he is playing 90 minutes and he's constantly, in the team and he's keeping those bonus. That could be an idea.
It comes back to flexibility again. That's what you get. Looking at the fixtures that are coming up, so we've got a game week 25, which is just West Ham, Liverpool, and then we've got game week 26. So if we look at, just go through all of those type of captains. So game week 25, who's your captain for that Liverpool West Ham game?
Probably Van Dijk again.
Yeah.
I know that West Ham could get spanked, really. They have got that in their locker. So Salah would be an option. It's going to be one to look at the team sheets. If Salah looks like he's up front, where he can be deadly, then I may be tempted to do that. If it doesn't look like he's up front and he's out wide, then it will be Van Dijk. I think they're probably the only 2 I'd look at, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar. Yeah, Salah is my captain at the moment because I just think whoever, any attacker against West Ham at the moment, what really cemented it for me was watching the West Ham West Brom game, which was, I mean, they were really poor, and the way Moyes just hauled off as many as he could because they were so awful. Mark Noble was really going for it, but having Mark Noble really going for it sort of made West Ham look even worse because it just showed they only had one. This guy was really going for it. He was like, see, this is what you could do when you could pass to another player and have some passion. And I just think they're there for the taking in that one. So sad for me. What about moving into game 26 on the Saturday? Lots of options. Liverpool again against Southampton, but also Richarlison. Everton, Watford, Manchester United, Wolves. I mean, there's a few Leicester, Chelsea. I don't know. I'm saying those features there. It's basically going to be a Liverpool player, isn't it?
Yeah, almost certainly. Richarlison, we don't even know if he's going to be fit. I mean, I had him in my team, and unfortunately, just bad luck, injury. He was going to cover a lot of these days, and he was going to be we spoke about it last time on the pod. He was going to be that differential captain pick, but Sod's Law, he got injured. So I don't think many other players are in consideration. You could look at a Sheffield United clean sheet against Palace, but it hardly seems inspiring. It's just going to be Salah, isn't it? I think for 90% of people, or Van Dijk.
Yeah, Salah at home as well always looks. He looks good everywhere, but at home he's particularly potent. On the Sunday, Burnley against Arsenal, Spurs against Man City. For me, KDB. If I had for some reason Aubameyang still, I'd be very tempted by him. But KDB really.
Yeah, it's Kevin De Bruyne. That's all it is. If I had Aubameyang the same, I'd be looking at that, but I don't. So,
well, let's have a look at your team now. Just before we go, we'll have a look at our team. So there we can see what you've been talking about with that 5-3-2, and that served you very well because I noticed in the the leaderboard we were sort of similar placing, and then you suddenly went about 30 points ahead of me. And I was thinking, how's he done that? And I'm thinking, oh yes, there we go, Henderson. So yeah, you've got it's a great pre-overhaul setup, and it's actually not a bad post-overhaul setup. Sure, you want to overhaul.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I did actually see a team on Twitter which had something like 8 Liverpool players out of the 11, and I'm sitting there thinking, do I just ignore every single match day for everyone else and just go with that team, because there's still a chance that they outscore my team, just how good they are and how dominant they are. Where is it? Yeah, I'm just going to read you this team just for giggles, really.
Okay.
Alisson in goal, Gomez, Van Dijk, Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold in defence. So the entire defence, no other defenders. Henderson and Oxlade-Chamberlain in centre midfield. And then he's got Lundstram and Cantwell as his 2 players that aren't from Liverpool, just to fill in. And then he's got Salah and Mane up top. So that was obviously pre-Mane injury. But that's 9 Liverpool players with 2 fillers, essentially, just to afford it. I mean, if you've got a B team and you think Liverpool are going to continue to dominate, it's something to think about, maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, just for the sake of those listening on the podcast, you've got Henderson, Van Dijk with the big C captain on him, Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, Sionju, Baldock, and then in your 3-man midfield, you've got Henderson, De Bruyne, Maddison up front, Firmino, and Mane. So technically 1 up front for the next couple of games. So yeah, actually really good. Yeah, only a couple of transfers off from being a really good post-overhaul side. My side's a bit different. No Henderson. So I've gone for that 4-3-3 still, and I think I'm going to have that similar structure. Not the same players though. So I've got Henderson in goal. He's probably going to stay. Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, they're going to stay. Sionju, no, don't think so now. Gilbert, definitely want to upgrade there. De Bruyne, Maddison and Grealish. Maddison will probably go. Almost definitely will go. Grealish will probably stay. I've got Firmino, Salah and Mane up front. So I really went for it with Liverpool attack there. But a lot of good it's done me with Mane's injury. Got 16 transfers left. Part of me is tempted to use a transfer. I'm probably going to leave it and just trust the remaining 10 players I've got and kind of limp in, really. I feel like I'm an elderly footballer limping in to this overhaul. Next time we meet, next week, we're going to talk in much more detail about the overhaul. I hope that's really helped people to sort of get those early thoughts together about the overhaul and the sort of team you might like and the sort of players there. But yeah, next week we're going to talk about that in earnest. But for now, Luke, good luck with the game weeks coming up, and good luck with your post-overhaul side.
Yeah, good luck, Joe. Thanks for having me on. I'll catch you next time.
Goodbye all.
Bye.